This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Linode, high-performance cloud hosting for everyone. Visit linode.com/MacVoices and take $20 off your first server package. Welcome to MacVoices Live on Facebook. I'm Chuck Joyner, and this is the talk of the Apple community. Folks, we have kind of a full house. We had one featured guest, and then a whole bunch of others showed up. So I'll leave the featured guest. I'll do the big build-up. So first, David Ginsburg, who seems to be becoming the unofficial co-host, weekly guest. David, thanks for being here. It's good to see you as always.
Great to see you, Chuck. Yeah, I'm enjoying filling that slot. So it seems like I'm having a good time with it. So why not?
Well, good. I'm glad. Someone who came primarily to heckle our featured guest, Mr. Michael E. Cohen. Michael, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming already.
Hi, Chuck. Well, it's not really to heckle Josh, but kind of a little bit.
Don't tease us, Michael. Just do it. And our featured guest, Mr. Josh Centers, managing editor of TidBITS. Josh, welcome. It's good to see you too.
Thanks for having me on.
So, first thing we gotta say is that Josh has changed his appearance. I'm not sure if he's in witness protection or not.
I regenerated.
Yeah. Usually, the big beard is here, and now it's gone with this little mustache. I'm intrigued by the change of identity, Josh.
Yet another victim of COVID because I wear a respirator when I'm around other people. I'm still pretty much on lockdown. And so to get a good seal on your face with the respirator, you can't have hair in the way. So I'm having to shave, which is awful and terrible. And I look like a cop, which presents its own issues these days. But it does give me a good respirator seal. So I'll be doing the Magnum PI thing for the foreseeable future, because it looks like we're not getting this thing under control anytime soon.
Doesn't
Yeah.
seem
Yeah.
On the upside, I can go out in public looking like Bane. So, I do have some fun with that.
I'm surprised you didn't show up wearing the mask for the intro, because that would have been just so awesome.
I should go get it. Well, it's kind of stupid looking, isn't it? Because the filters are pink. So, you're not going to intimidate anybody wearing, big pink filters on your face.
Well, that's how you get them.
Yeah. I was going to say either that or they just figure you're so bad that you wear pink filters and they're definitely not going to mess with you. Folks, if you're out there watching on Facebook, you're welcome to join us live in the Zoom room. I have the chat information the Zoom information in the chat. I'll continue to post that to make sure it's updated. Come on in and join us. Or if you have questions or comments for Josh, or for any of the crew, by all means, please just put them in the chat. We'll catch up with them and get your questions answered.
And tonight should prove to be controversial. So, fully expecting people to come in and heckle. And, honestly, I welcome it because, the topic we're going to be discussing is something that I don't pretend to know everything about. And so, I'm just kind of out there, putting myself on the line, trying to get the issues out there in the public forum. And so, I welcome the feedback. I welcome people who have more knowledge than I do to, present their own views of things.
Thank you for that segue, Josh, because the topic we're going to talk about are the Apple App Store policies and how they've changed, and especially right now with the big kerfuffle over Epic Games, which seems to be changing really on pretty much a daily basis, if not faster.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed so much in a fortnight.
Yes.
Oh, I can't believe you went for that.
That joke was just too weak.
But you knew it was going to come at some point. So, I mean, let's start with that.
Okay.
Because as of this recording, folks, which is Tuesday, the 18th of August, Apple has basically given Epic a deadline to kind of get in line. I'm sorry?
They've given them a fortnight.
A fortnight, yes. They've given them a deadline to kind of get in line with Apple Store policies or have their developer license revoked. And this has some pretty deep implications for Fortnite, because not only does it have to do with the game development of Fortnite, but it also has to do with their Unreal Engine, I guess, driving a whole lot of other games. And man, I am way over my head here because I'm not a gamer. But from what I've read, listened to, and done just a little bit of research on, there is one other alternative out there but I have no idea. And I'll ask you, gentlemen, if I have written a game based on the Unreal Engine, how difficult is it for me to port over to that other engine?
Hard. I mean, I'm not a game so just to explain to people what the Unreal Engine is, or what an engine is. So game development's really difficult, right? So you have like all these, especially nowadays. Like go back 40 years ago and everything's just bits and blocks and stuff. A guy can knock out a game in 2 weeks. But nowadays you have all these polygons and shaders and shadows and reflections. And what Unreal lets you do is basically sit down with, you don't have to have a deep knowledge of C++ or any kind of programming language. And it kind of gives you the toolkit to create content, advanced graphical content like that. And it's important to point out just what a big deal this is, because Unreal is not just a game engine. It's not just something used to make video games. It's actually very heavily used in Hollywood now. If you've seen the show The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, I'm sure a lot of our viewers are at least familiar with the show. A lot of the backgrounds in that show were created in the Unreal Engine. That's how powerful it is now. Like they can create entire virtual environments like that.
Yeah, basically, as a game developer, you don't have to program for yourself people walking across a plane with a gun that shoots, because it's all built in. You can do that with stuff that's built into the engine. Mm-hmm. So your job is to find out where you want the guy to be walking, what kind of gun, and why, and build the game story around it. So without the engine, you've just got a storyboard.
And even in the world of gaming, there are so many games that are built with Unreal. I mean, and not even necessarily. So, some of our older game-oriented viewers might be familiar with the original game Unreal after the engine is named, which is a first-person shooter, and then there were the Unreal Tournament games. But I mean, there's a lot of games based on the Unreal Engine. You may remember, and see, here's what's funny about this is that Epic has had such a close partnership with Apple. Tim Sweeney has been on stage at many WWDCs. You might remember the what are they called? The name just slipped out of my head. The fighting game they had for the iPad, Infinity something. Anyway, it's
Infinity Blade.
Yeah, the Infinity Blade games. That
Listen
was
to me. Wow.
Yeah, you out gamered me. So the Infinity Blade games, that was a big deal for the iPad because that was like console level graphics, and that was Unreal Engine, and that wasn't a first person shooter or anything like that. And of course, they had the infamous Zen Garden demo showing off the Unreal Engine on Metal, because when and I've been looking into this history the past week, when Apple introduced Metal, which is their game graphic engine for iOS and now the Mac too, they had, Epic was a big partner in that. They had Tim Sweeney on stage showing off the capabilities of Metal. So this rift between the two companies is a big, big deal. And something we're probably going to be dealing with the repercussions of for years.
One other thing, though, that I think is important to understand, and honestly, I did not understand it because with all seriousness, not being a gamer, I have no frame of reference here. So I did not realize that Epic Games is the size company it is. That it's in like the $1 billion club.
Yeah, we're watching a couple of behemoths go at it against each other. I mean, this is not the little guy against the big guy. This is a big guy against a bigger guy.
It's more David versus Saul than David versus Goliath.
Yeah.
My Uncle Saul?
Yeah. But so here's the funny thing. So Epic's acting like Apple is just, they've just been holding us back. We just can't make the money. They made, in 2018 alone, in the App Store alone, they made $500 million from Fortnite, just from Fortnite, none of their other properties. Now, mind you, Fortnite is a quote-unquote free game aimed at children, and Fortnite makes this money by selling what they call V-Bucks. And I don't think you can buy any sort of performance enhancements in the game, which is good. But you can buy like skins, things like that, things that make your character appear different, make your weapons appear different. And I can tell you, like my son's just now barely into Fortnite, but I know so many parents who spend just a small fortune on these V-Bucks, and it's like all their kids want. So, I'm a little questionable that business model in the first place. But just to bring that point out, Epic isn't really hurting here. They might pay Apple a big cut on that one platform. I should also point out that 30% cut, they also pay to Sony, which owns 10% of Epic. They also pay to Microsoft because that's what the console makers charge. They also pay to Nintendo. But they're not suing them.
Well, and exactly, and that's where you need some of the context here, because they are picking on Apple and Google. They picked on Apple first, Google second, or maybe at the same time. It's just Apple called them on it first. I'm not quite sure which, but the idea that they're doing this, they're trying to ride this wave of potential monopolistic behavior, and the way they did it. I mean, they really were sneaky the way they inserted the idea that you can pay me. Forgive me, I don't know the exact numbers, but let's just say you can pay me directly $7 or you can pay $9 through the Apple Store, basically giving Apple their cut. Well, if I'm presented with that option, of course I'm going to pay the $7 if I'm getting the same thing. And that's a clear violation of the guidelines. And so Apple called him on it and pulled him.
Yeah. So just to be really clear about what they did, so everyone just fully understands what happened. So one day, Epic announces, "Hey, V-Bucks from now on are 20% off. They're 20% off. They're 20% off on on PlayStation. They're 20% off on Xbox. They're 20% off on iOS if you go through our payment system and not Apple's." And here's the thing that really ticked Apple off. And I think Apple has a right to be ticked off about this, because this wasn't something they updated through the App Store. They added, the rule is very clear. You're not allowed to sell digital goods to the App Store unless you use Apple's payment system. Okay, that's a very consistent rule, unless you're Amazon for some reason. But the real issue is they slipped this in on the back end. They released an update in the App Store, and then they went in the back end, the server end, and added this feature in to bypass Apple's payment system. Now, they could have added anything into that if they wanted to with their server structure. They could have added malware in. They could have added, just anything. And so I don't blame. From that perspective, I don't blame Apple one bit for being angry about it. And then what's ridiculous is when Apple predictably banned them, banned Fortnite for doing this, they instantly had this 100-page lawsuit. They instantly had this propaganda video. And this is something, so I'm going to rant a little bit here. This is something that ticks me off too. So they produced this little cartoon that clearly took more than, probably a fortnight to build, and not to mention the lawsuit they probably spent months working on. And then they put this in. So what they do, they made this animation where they're like, poking fun at Apple. It's like a parody of the 1984 ad, and they're trying to accuse Apple of being Big Brother. They show this in the game. Okay, now this is a game aimed at children. Okay, this is a game. I think the typical player, my son plays it. Typical age of playing it, like 7 and like 16. Okay, it's very bright and colorful and all that. And so, what really irks me about this is that they're trying to recruit children in their PR battle against Apple. And that really irks me. I don't like my kids being propagandized to, because that's not, Epic has plenty of money. They don't need my kid getting mad at Apple, for their sake. So that right there just rubs me the wrong way. And they very clearly, so they didn't just defy Apple's rules that they had agreed to. I mean, they've agreed to for years. I mean, Tim Sweeney used to just sing the praises of the App Store and how great the App Store was. And then they pull around, they slip this on the back end, do it the sneakiest way possible. And the second Apple takes action, as I think they had a right to do in this case, they come out with this big lawsuit, they come out with this big propaganda campaign. And here's the thing, and here's why I think that Epic, I agree with a lot of the things Epic wants, okay? And we can get to that in a minute. But here's why I think Epic is full of it. Is because one of the things in the lawsuit, now, they don't want any money from Apple. They're not asking for any damages. What they're asking is for changes in policy. The main thing they want in their lawsuit is they want Apple to allow other app stores. They want to allow sideloading. They want to allow distribution on the iPhone without the App Store, okay? Now, so they pulled the same stunt with Google. Google banned them from the Google Play Store. Google, guess who Epic's suing? Google. Now, what does Google allow on Android? They allow sideloading. In fact, for the first 18 months that Fortnite was distributed on Android, they actually distributed outside of the Google Play Store. But see, now, what they're complaining about with Google is they're saying, well, they make it too hard. The user has to go and find it. They can't just have it pre-installed. Oh, they get a security warning when they sideload. Listen, I'm not a big Android guy. I run a few Android devices, right? And there's some of them, I don't run anything Google on. I try on the sideload thing, you do a system hack, get rid of all the Google stuff, and I just sideload stuff. It's literally a switch. You flip a switch, you can install whatever you want. You get like one little pop-up, and that's it. It's not like Windows Vista or something. It's not like they stop you from loading that stuff. So Epic is just totally full of crap. What they want is, they want to be in these app stores. They want Google and Apple to host the apps for them, and they want them to promote the apps for them, and they want to pay them jack and squat. That's what Epic wants. They want they want this ride, they want the distribution, they want the payment method and all that, and they want to pay nothing for it. That's what they want. Okay.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by Linode. You can build it on Linode. By visiting linode.com/MacVoices, you can take $20 off your first server package. So what are you buying? You are buying a service that delivers dedicated CPUs, distributed applications, hosted websites, and CI/CD environments. You are buying native SSD storage, a 40 gigabit network, and industry-leading processors, so your website or hosted service will be as fast as possible and as responsive as possible. You are buying a spot in one of Linode's 10 worldwide data centers, including the newest in Mumbai. You are buying their new Cloud Manager feature, with an improved user interface. You are buying one-click installs of things like WordPress, Minecraft, VPNs, and much more. That's what you're buying when you visit linode.com/MacVoices, and you get $20 off your first server package to boot. Get your next project off the ground and into the cloud at linode.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Linode for their support of MacVoices. And so I'm going to pile on too, because the other thing they seem to have very, very ready is this attempt to gather up a lot of the Apple critics and the people who have been beating the anti-competitive drum, notably Spotify, and whipping them into this and making it seem they're trying hard to make Apple seem like the bad guy. And really, I don't see how
AstroTurf.
I'm sorry.
A lot of this is astroturfing. They're trying to create a groundswell movement, some of which is real and some of which is manufactured.
Well, but look, at the end of the day, there's one question here that started the whole thing, and that is, did they violate App Store guidelines? And the answer is a very clear yes on 2 counts. And so, that right there, I mean, protest all you want. Do all the press releases, if you want to file the lawsuit, see if you can find a grounds for it. But when you are this guilty of this, I just can't, I don't get it. I can't believe that any court is going to allow this kind of thing and try to give some kind of remedy when the basis for it is a clear violation of the guidelines.
I mean, how's the court going to see that? Not see the fact that this was planned? I mean, it flat out blatantly was planned. I mean, everything, like you said, like Josh said, everything fell into place. They pulled the stunt. They got pulled out of the store. Immediately have the lawsuit, and then I mean, how does a judge or anybody that is even looking at this case not want to think that this was not planned?
Well, it goes to the legal definitions and implementation of laws against antitrust law. And I think what they're trying to do is show that there's a monopoly restraint of trade that Apple's running. That might be their grounds, but doing it the way they did kind of like cuts a lot of the standing of their case out from under them.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't claim to be injured if you're hitting somebody with a baseball bat.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very cynical because I think they're trying to prey on the ignorance. First of all, on the PR front, they're trying to prey on the ignorance of children. And then on the antitrust front, they're trying to prey on the ignorance of Congress, right? They want to go for Congress.
Which is big.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who watched that 5.5-hour tech CEO hearing, which was one of the better ones. Surprisingly, I've seen.
I'm still, shaking the shards out from my brain from that.
But yeah, oh man, yeah, I'll never get those brain cells back or that time back. So so I think it's a very cynical attempt, and just something I got to bring up. And it's a thought I had in the back of my head from the start, but I tend to have some paranoid thoughts, and I just kind of keep my mouth shut. There's actually our friend Glenn Fleischman who mentioned it to me independently. I was like, well, if Glenn's thinking this, then there's something to it. Okay, so we cannot forget that who owns 40% of Epic? Tencent, Chinese-owned Tencent. Now it would be very clear, People's Republic of China. Okay, not the Chinese people, and just recently, the Trump administration effectively announced they're going to ban TikTok and Tencent. And then just a couple of weeks later, this whole thing breaks out. So it really makes you go, just what is the end game here? Because I don't see how, from a business perspective, I don't see how this is good for Epic at all. I mean, it definitely probably isn't going to be good for Apple, let's be honest. But it's not good for Epic either.
Is it going to be good for the PRC?
Well, if they disrupt Apple or if they put enough pressure on an American company, possibly. Yeah.
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 But doesn't Sweeney have, he has controlling interest, though, in the company?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, come on, 40%. Look, if somebody owned 40% of your house, you'd probably get some input on, whether you're going to sell it or not, or, if you're going to burn part of it down. So, I don't know if there's anything there, but I do think it's worth, understanding in the whole scheme of things. I don't have like a specific conspiracy theory or something. I'm not going to invent one. But, it's something to keep in mind when you're trying to judge just what Epic's motives are. And the timing certainly is interesting.
That's a fair point.
There are no innocent players in this game.
No. And just to be really clear, I am not, I mean, you can call me an Apple fanboy, and I guess it's at least partially true, but I'm fully cognizant of Apple's various issues. In fact, if you go to TidBITS, you can read my very, very long diatribe about all the many developer complaints about the App Store. So it's not as though...
Actually, Josh, you're mischaracterizing it. It wasn't a diatribe. It was actually a very clear recitation of the various arguments that have been brought against Apple.
Well, I thank you.
But it was less wild-eyed than I thought it would be, seeing your name on the byline. But
Adam tones me down pretty well.
He tones us all down.
So I want to get to that article and some of those complaints. Okay. But, Michael, there's one thing. I disagree with you, because I do think there is an innocent party here, and that's Apple. Okay, and go with me on this. All right, Apple set up the App Store. They said, here are the terms. We're not coming out and putting a gun to your head or anything, but here are the terms. And if you want to be in the App Store, you agree to it. Now, to address the monopolistic thing, I have a real problem with somebody saying that because Apple built the iPhone and Apple said, and it became wildly popular for whatever reason. Security is one reason. Design's another. Function is another. But for whatever reason, it became wildly popular. Now, all of a sudden, everybody says, I have the right to be on that device. But I don't want to pay the freight. And that disturbs me greatly, because I don't think that's
where Apple's innocence begins to slip. And this is the problem, is that Apple hasn't been completely fair with everybody. They haven't played by the same rules with everybody. There are certain players on the App Store that get special treatment. Netflix, for one. Josh can tell you about others because he's actually written about that. But the fact is, for almost every single developer, Apple has had a relatively consistent set of rules. But they haven't been well implemented. They haven't been completely well managed. There's been a lot of friction and complaint among developers because it's sort of a black box when your stuff gets evaluated and you don't know who to respond to. You're just given a list of things you've got to change, and you don't know why. You don't know if they even understand what you were doing. You don't even know if they understood what they were looking at. So there's been a lot of problems just in the implementation of how Apple manages the app submission process and the approval process. Aside from that, they have not been consistent with everybody in the store. Certain featured players get a little bit of extra wiggle room. And that's That's the problem.
Yeah, but Michael, I've made this point a half dozen times. That's the way the world works. All right. I do a podcast. David does a podcast. All right. Do you think we're featured on the front page of the podcast directory constantly, like somebody, let's say, and I'm going to go to the past, like Joe Rogan or great Howard Stern might have been, or right now ESPN I think is prominent there. No, I mean if you command a larger audience or a larger revenue base, and clearly Netflix does, Amazon does, yeah, you get preferential treatment. This idea that everybody has to be equal, and so the guy that produces 3 episodes of a podcast and says, I'm not on the front page. Well, okay, the guy that has produced one app that, counts sheep at night, and he's expecting to have the same standing as, in this case, somebody like Epic, or Microsoft, or I don't know who else. I mean, Affinity or Smile or pick somebody that is a big dominant player. That's just the way the world works. And I don't recall. I mean,
what Epic is trying to do is say to Apple, well, if them, why not us? And because they didn't give Epic that sort of thing, Epic's decided in their minds, in their hearts, well, then we're going to go to full-out war.
You know what's really funny about the Epic situation is that Apple banned them from the App Store so fast that there were still App Store stories, I guess that's what they call them, about all the various updates to Fortnite. Because Apple's written like dozens of articles about Fortnite, and they still had all those up. They might still, for all I know, that they forgot to pull down because they promoted Epic so much. Okay, so for me, I'm kind of a libertarian-minded person. My core issue with the way Apple runs the App Store, and Chuck, I agree with you 100% on everything, except here's the problem, is that the only way to distribute software on the iPhone is through the App Store. Now, there's good reasons for that, right? Like there are very good, at least in theory, security reasons to do so, okay? But here's the problem, is that Apple a lot of times bans things for their own interest, or they ban them. And sometimes it's not even their business interest. Sometimes it's their political interest. Sometimes it's like Apple's like, no, we don't like that. You shouldn't have that. And personally, and a lot of times the stuff they ban under that banner, I'm not going to get into a lot of specifics. I'm sure people can think of a lot of their own examples. It's not even like that it goes into my wheelhouse. It's nothing that affects me personally, but just the idea of it bothers me, right? Like I should be able, I pay big money for these iPhones. I mean, heck, they cost over $1,000 now. I pay big money for this phone. I should be able to install any software I want on it. For instance, Apple bans emulators, right? Which are on every other computing platform in the world, right? You can get a toaster oven and have an NES emulator on it, right? So, if I want to, install an emulator and play Mario 3, I realize there's some potential legal issues for Apple, but here's the thing. Nobody cares. Google has tons of them in the Play Store. Nobody cares. The Mac has tons of them. Nobody cares. I should be able to do that. Now, if, people want to keep their devices locked down, I think they should have the right to that. It's just like on the Mac, and Apple has total control over Mac software, which is part of where this Epic thing is interesting, because if Apple pulls Epic's developer certificate, not only does that kill their App Store apps, because just about everyone has system integrity protection enabled on their Mac. Once that certificate gets pulled, everything that runs Unreal Engine, gone, no longer works. It's what happened to, I keep on saying Charlie Hebdo. It's Charlie Monroe. Oddly enough, not the guy's name, the name of the company. So this fella, he wakes up one morning and gets an email, yeah, we've deleted your developer account. I'm sorry, you what? Now, mind you, this is the guy's only source of income. This is his entire livelihood, okay? And then if you launch any of his apps, and he makes some really nice apps. One I reviewed for TidBITS is one called Downy that lets you download YouTube videos. In fact, for a minute, people thought Apple did this because he has the app that lets you download YouTube videos. Anyway, that wasn't what it was. What it turns out, anyway, so you try to launch one of his apps, it said, this app's going to harm your computer. It's dangerous. Delete it. Here's how to move it to the trash. That's the message people got. Okay? And so It turns out what it was an automated system that checks for malware. And for some reason, this system just went, bonkers and just marked them as malware. And there was no human intervention at all. And the certificate just got revoked. The account just got wiped out. Now that's kind of a scary thing. But that aside, on the Mac, you're generally allowed to install anything you want on the Mac, whether it comes from the App Store or not. And I think we can all agree the Mac doesn't really have a malware problem. You hear about something every now and then, but it's usually like 15 steps to even if you wanted to replicate this, if you really want to get this on your machine, you're going to have to jump through hoops to do that. So
and in all cases, you actually have to have the machine.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you have to trick the user into, disabling a lot of safety mechanisms. So, I mean, I think Apple has proven, whether they want to or not, that you can safely distribute software. And also, let's bear in mind, too, in iOS that there's more than just the App Store distribution that protects you. It's also the sandboxing. And one of the issues I bring up in this article, and I know I'm ranting here, but one of the issues I bring up in this article is that there are a lot of malicious apps in the App Store. Not necessarily malware. Apple does a pretty good job of catching that, but not always. Does anyone else remember the flashlight apps that actually jailbroke your device? Sure. Apple just let through. But there are tons. David Bernard actually documented a bunch of these years ago where they would just take a template and just slap out an app and have a $99 a year in-app purchase and try to trick you into signing up for this stuff. And I see junk at the App Store all the time, and part of the deal Apple makes with developers and users is look, pay us the 30%, give us total control over the experience, give us total control over the device. In exchange, you have nothing but good apps. And that's just not true. This is not true. They're not protecting the developers and they're not protecting the users.
Ironically, when you search for Fortnite in the App Store, the first app that comes up is TikTok. I just was trying to hold back cracking up when I did it.
Wait a minute. Both names, Fortnite, TikTok, they have to do with time.
Yeah.
Is this the Chronicons coming after us?
Thank you, Adam West.
but a lot of the add-ons and all the other stuff is still in the App Store. So you search Fortnite, there's still a lot of remnants of what's that's behind for Fortnite. So, and what happens to these small-time app developers who are providing wallpapers and dances and all kinds of other stuff that it's added in there too. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see where it goes.
And I don't mean to sound unsympathetic, to this situation, to the YouTubers who, suddenly wake up one day and find out that YouTube has changed the game. But if you're building your livelihood or whatever on these platforms, I mean, you're getting into bed with them and, it may not work out quite as well as you would like. That wraps up the first part of our MacVoices live conversation with featured guest Josh Centers, along with Michael E. Cohen and David Ginsburg. In the second part, we get into even more discussion of the Apple v. Epic Games situation and also swing that discussion toward a broader examination of developer policies, what Apple does right, what maybe they could do better, and how it's going to affect all of us going forward. I know it's an episode of MacVoices you will enjoy, so I hope to see you then. As always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.